Good job.
Please take your seats. For the purposes of announcements, does any individual seek recognition? Senator Nevins. Please, the Senate will be in order. Oh, you're just getting up. Oh, okay. Senator Germain, and then Associate Speaker Amaratis.
Hello, everybody. Quick announcement. Chair applications are open for all 8 chairs. They'll be open until next Tuesday at midnight. So please apply. You can find the link in the link tree in the Instagram bio. Thanks. Till Tuesday the 22nd, they'll close. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Does any other individual seek recognition? Associate Speaker Amaratis.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to remind you that as a senator, you have to attend 2 ESO or so events a semester. The form has been included in the emails every week. You should have seen it. Please start to fill that out if you have done them. Don't wait until the last minute. I'm starting to check those. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And SABs do not count as ESO events. Any questions? Okay.
Chair Sarna.
If anyone would like some candy, just come up to me. I have a bag full of Sour Patch Kids. Thanks to Kenyatta.
Any other individual seek recognition? Secretary Heblow.
Hello. As you guys know, there's been a situation with international students getting their visas canceled. I'm currently on working on making a permanent position for the Secretary of International Services that might be able to help out with that and conducting situation with admin for that, or discussing solutions with admin for that and coordinating that as well. So fear not, the SGA is helping to help out with that situation. Thank you.
Any questions? Chair Stamen. Flip up. Is it flipped up? Any other microphone?
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I just want to ask actually about that position. So, one, are we intending for this to be a paid position? And then the second question I wanted to ask, do we have any like roles and responsibilities that are written out, or is this just more like an idea that we're floating with?
Thanks for the question. In terms of pay, I don't know yet. That would literally be up to you and Secretary Bellarive over if it can be paid or not, because I know it would be, I know the S1's about to get voted on soon. So I know that like that kind of goes into cabinet pay. That also depends on if the SGA wants to use their discretionary fund for that. I have no idea. But in terms of the roles and responsibilities, the roles and responsibilities are already kind of highlighted in the Undersecretary of International Services. Kind of just transfer over. I just wanted to make sure that it would actually be able to incorporate into the SGA. Introducing something into the SGA, like a new cabinet position, can be kind of heavy, even if it might not seem like it is. So that's all it would do. I not of this year. It would go for next year. I'm going to introduce it, hopefully like soon, but I don't know if AA has something to say about that.
Bylaw amendments for the Associate Secretary of International Services. So that's currently a position reflected in our bylaws that is under our external affairs. But yeah, it sounds like you're working on expanding on that. But yeah, we currently have a little bit in place for that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be anything that the SGA bylaws haven't really seen, I promise. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, thank you.
All right, we're getting AV up here to help with the microphones. Please hold.
Michael, are they?
Do you need all four?
What?
Yeah, do you want all four?
Yeah.
These ones? Okay, that's why.
Senate will stand in a brief recess. All right, the Associate Speaker will record the roll call.
Senator Denny. Senator Areola. Senator Bauman. Senator Beltrami. Senator Black. Senator Borowski. Senator Buchasova. Chair Centenaro. Senator Chamu. Senator DeMarco. Senator Dami. Senator Duarte. Clerk Betty. Senator Eze. Senator Ficiccio. Senator Gatto. Senator Germain. Senator Hercule. Senator Hiranandani. Senator Holohan. Senator Ibrahim. Senator Imran. Senator Jame. Senator Kim. Senator Kim. Senator Lequier. Senator Lay. Senator LaFleur. Senator Molesky. Senator Malari. Senator Monda. Chair Mazondo. Senator Mello. Senator Nashi. Senator Nevins. Senator Nguyen. Chair Onyeka. Senator Patek. Senator Fawn. Sorry. Senator Prabhakar. Chair Raven. Senator Rue. Chair Sarna. Chair Sharma. Senator Shi. Chair Stamen. Senator Tao. Chair Tran. Senator Trung. Senator Verma. Senator Walker Hoover. What? Okay. Okay. Count is 29.
Well, luckily with 29 voting members, we have quorum. The minutes were sent out 48 hours prior. Are there any corrections? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved without objection. All right, on to committee of the whole. So, Senate does have some committee of the whole business, so we'll adjourn to begin committee of the whole, where we will discuss the presentation regarding the Reckwell SGA Club Sports Transition Memorandum of Understanding, and also the presentation regarding the proposed amendments to Title VII, Chapter 7 of the General Bylaws. And so the Senate will stand in recess, and the committee of the whole shall be in session. Chair invites up Chair Stamen, President Humphreys, Vice President Leone, Associate Speaker Amaratis to present on the Reckwell SGA Club Sports Transition Memorandum of Understanding.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna wait until I finish it.
Testing. On. Oh, nice. Hi, everybody. How are you all doing tonight? So, yeah, I went to. Wanted to make sure we could get some sustained working of the mic before we got into business. But so today we are going to talk about the recent agreement between us and Recwell on club sports. As you may be aware, this past Thursday we officially signed the club sports agreement. So we kind of want to talk to you about what that means, what it entails, and why this is a great thing for both the SGA and our university. Yeah, next slide. All right, so we decided to include a few things, but as you can see, this has taken a very, very long time to do. Next. Again, me and Maya got carried away with the names. But today we rise again, and you can see we have all of our wonderful partners here. We got myself, Vice President Leone, Speaker Flanagan, Chair Shaman, and Secretary Bellery, who've all put in work to this. So what I'm going to pass. Oh, is this where you start, right? There you go. You're going to bike.
Okay, well, we all know what a club sport is, right? I'm assuming we do. We've worked with them for a while. But just for review, because we have a new definition just for Recwell. Club sports are student-led organizations, just like our RSOs. They're focusing on skill development and going to competitions. They will now be fully supported by the Recwell staff and their resources. Yes, we can clap for this. Yes. No more SGA. Yay. For a club sport, they must have a national governing body, especially if they're competing. So they have to be recognized by a national entity. Most club sports are. That is kind of how they go to compete. And they have to be open to full-time UMass Amherst students. A lot of this is stuff we're familiar with, yes? Yes. Okay, so let's move on then. I don't have to spend too much time here. Let's talk about the financial structure and how we're funding club sports. I know I talked about this in my report out, but I also know we're half asleep during my report out. So we're going to talk about it one more time, maybe the third time, right? So club sports in total are getting $400,000 per year. $50K of that is going to their nationals, their competitions, that kind of stuff. Everything else is being administered fairly by the Recwell. Okay? Allocation process. So I'll be talking about this a little bit later on, but they have a board called ROB. I love to refer to them as ROB, Review Advisory Board. They review their finances and they make recommendations to the Ways and Means Committee. I will be detailing what that process looks like in just a moment. And then after they make a recommendation, the Ways and Means Committee receives the financial recommendation, just like they do with the SGA financial process this year. And they will vote, and then they will add it to the S1. That is how club sports will be funded. Does that make sense? Great. Okay. So as we all know, club sports used to be funded by the SGA. Fun fact for you, they actually were the second most expensive council that we were funding. So that is so important as to why they are being transferred to Recwell, so that more financial oversight and the finances are being used a little bit more fairly, equitably, and responsibly, right? And, you know, as I said earlier, process is changing. Make sense? We're all good? Great. Thanks. We can move on. All right. This is my lovely tier pyramid. So this is kind of how Recwell will be allocating funding to club sports. They're going to be doing it using a tier system. This is going to be done using a mathematical formula. They're going to be looking at their non-salary expenses for the past 3 fiscal years. I would like to point out, this is my mini disclaimer. Right now, this says FY19, FY22, and 23. These are interesting years because one of them is like post-COVID, right? And these are the most up-to-date fiscal years that we have regarding their finances. So as soon as we get more updated financial information, they will be adjusting this to reflect what they actually need. But this is the only data
financial data we have available. So this is what we'll be using. All right. So they're going to look at those 3 years. They're going to take a look at their fee, their revenue. They're adding them up together and dividing by 2. This is to encourage them to also fundraise some of the funds as well, because that's also something we as an SGA are trying to do. Does that make sense so far? Did I lose us anywhere? Great. Okay. And then they're going to get a value and they're going to match it to the closest tier. And so that's kind of how this works. They have 5 tiers. 5 is the most. Other way around. Does that make sense? All right. And then to move up a tier, because as orgs, they expand, they grow, you get more membership, we get more financial needs as you grow and you become more successful. And that is also why this formula is so great, because we're constantly updating it to reflect the new financial information. And then we'll see more money appearing in their revenue. And that is how we'll be using it to move them up tiers if they so need. Does that make sense? All right. Next slide. Okay. This is the ROB, the Review Advisory Board. Okay. ROB, they're like a little committee, right? You have representatives from the SGA, club sports, and all the key stakeholders sitting in on these regular meetings and making decisions and advising the RecWell on how to best serve our club sports. So as I said earlier, they're guiding funding recommendations, decisions, projects, big things like that. They're going to be focusing a lot on risk management the first couple of years. They're trying to expand space, provide more storage space. So I know that's a huge project they're working on, right? Because a lot of the groups personally keep their soccer balls and then run away with them once they graduate, and then they request funding for it the next year. We kind of don't want groups doing that, right? And so membership has 9 voting members. As I said earlier, SGA membership and representation will be on this board, and there'll be 2 co-chairs who kind of run this group: SGA membership, club reps, and student engagement and leadership faculty. Cool beans? We following? All right, cool. And as I said, meets monthly. Same rules that apply to us apply to them, and they prepare a budget for the SGA. Okay, so let's talk about how we're funding club sports. Club sports are still groups that consist of UMass Amherst fee-paying students. That means we still have to fund them. So, as I said earlier, $400,000, we do have to allocate that amount. So what's going to happen is the RecWell staff is going to review their spending. They're going to create these tiers, put everyone how they need to, and then the ROB is going to meet. And they're going to look at this information, and they're going to be like, okay, time to prepare a recommendation for the SGA. Now, the reason we're providing them an opportunity to create a recommendation is because, again, needs expand, things happened, shit hits the fan, as we all like to say. So maybe they need less money, maybe they need more. If they do, they can ask for it by a certain percentage margin, and they need to explain why. That is how we're holding them accountable. And then they're coming to the committee. The committee is going to then vote, add it to the S1, and it's going to come to the SGA Undergraduate Senate. We're going to vote on it just like we do usually. How we usually vote on an S1. You'll see it later on this year. And then they're going to get their funding. RecWell distributes. Does that make sense? Deciding to distribute, distributing. Cool.
All right, I am back. So now I get to talk about the fun part. I get to talk about how this is going to benefit our club sports and how this is going to benefit all of us. So first and foremost, there will now be increased support for advising, funding, space, and equipment. One of the things that ResLife has agreed to do as part of this deal is they are going to have new staffs specifically tailored towards helping club sports. As you may know, the source is very overwhelmed. They're the people who advise our RSOs. So what this means is club sports will now have an advising staff specifically tailored to them, and the rest of our RSOs will be better served because the source will have more capacity now to advise, because we, as you guys know, we have a extreme amount of clubs right now. It is extremely high, and this will allow some stress to come off of the source. It'll also allow some stress to come off of our officers, our lovely Ways and Means, finance, registry officers who deal with this large amount of RSOs every day. Will have a little bit of a weight lifted off their shoulder. Don't worry, SGA will still have representation on the ROB, but I imagine that those individuals will probably maybe be different than the ones that are dealing with the rest of the RSOs, because I know how tremendously stressful it has been on them, but we'll see. Launching a brand new comprehensive club sports handbook. This was something that the last administration worked a lot to develop. I saw a lot of elements of their plan in that particular section. Ultimately, it's going to ensure a much more safe, fun, and fair experience for everybody who plays. There's going to be more allocation of space. Recwell has a better capacity to give out equipment than we do. We don't exactly, like Maya said, like people lose their soccer balls and fund request them the next year, whereas Recwell has all sorts of athletic equipment. I just want to note this is ultimately going to be a really great day for our club sports, as well as for the rest of our RSOs and for our SGA. I also want to note that the $400,000 that we are allocating is less than what we currently pay, so we are saving a little bit of money there as well, which is also something we've been looking to do. So overall, this is going to take a huge burden off of us, and it is going to make both our SGA processes better. It's going to really make the experience for club sports better, and it's going to even improve the experience of the rest of the RSOs. And our source advisors will be very happy because their lives, I wouldn't say they got easy, but they got a little bit easier. But last, I just want to say this was a really, really historic move, and it would not have been possible without Recwell, who was just fantastic throughout this whole process. Ruben Sanka, who was the director of Recwell up until last Friday, he unfortunately has left us to take a different job in Boston. I'm sure he's going to do great there, but he was fantastic throughout the whole process. He really put so much time and diligence into these proposals, and made sure that no matter what, that this would be done before he left his position. Even after he knew he was taking a different job, he continued to make sure that this was finished out. I want to thank Ernie, who oversees the club sports. He's been fantastic working with the groups, helping them to understand this, and also helping us craft this proposal. I want to thank our SACL people. Shelly's been really great throughout this whole process. Bretzi Krakow, Sid's been great throughout this entire process. I also want to thank our SGA people, particularly our Ways and Means. Shermaya has been very, very involved in this from start to finish. Dale, Michael, Melina, Dylan. We could not have done this without the hard work of everybody. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of give those acknowledgments, and I want to note that this is something we alluded to at the beginning, that this has been a long time. It's been at least 6-7 years, maybe longer. It's been talked about since I joined the SGA 4 years ago, and finally we got it done. So this is something to celebrate. And lastly, I want to note that this will be implemented beginning with the next budget cycle for FY27. So for context, because there's always a little confusion, right now we're in FY25. Starting July 1st, you'll be in FY26. That is what you're allocating for right now. All the Ways and Means allocations that have been happening as of late are for FY26. And then next year, they'll start the allocation process for FY27. And that's when they're going to start allocating based on this model, which will officially take effect in July of 2026. So for the fall 2026 semester, club sports will officially be under Recwell using this model. So anybody else want to add anything before we go to questions?
Yeah, I just want to add two kind of quick points. I want to thank everybody again for all the hard work they did to make this happen, but I also really want to emphasize like how big this is financially. All club sports for this year requested $3 million for the next cycle. So $3 million is a lot of money that we don't have. So the fact that we're able to now have this club sport transition go through, only provide $400,000 and have over $340,000 from the administration, from Recwell be provided, as well as like transportation that they're doing is really huge. It's going to ease the burden on the SATF and just overall ease the burden and just ease the resources that we're able to provide for the rest of the RSO. So this is like a really big thing. It's been ongoing since 2015, I believe. And so now it's finally happening. And I'm kind of jealous that we won't be able to be here to see, this actually take effect, but it's really huge. And I'm glad that we'll be able to leave you guys with this great deal.
Any questions? You good? No questions?
If anyone wants to see the full memorandum of understanding, like the full document, just let us know. We can provide that to you. But yeah, thanks.
We love no questions. This is fantastic. So hopefully that means you all have a great understanding.
Yeah. Nothing at all.
Nothing?
Well, our emails are on the agenda, on the presentation, or on the website everywhere. So if anything comes up, do email us.
Thank you all so much.
All right. I'll now invite up Secretary Merchant to present on the proposed amendments to Title VII, Chapter 7 of the General Bylaws.
Hello? Yeah. So as you all know, for the past whole semester, I've been mentioning that I've been working on reforms to the RSO application. I haven't done it alone. I've done it with the help of Colin Dale, chair of UROC, chair of AA, advisors, and then of course the Registry Reform Task Force, which was comprised of senators and other members from leadership. And today I just wanted to walk you guys through those changes as sort of an introduction. Hopefully next week, the actual bylaw amendments that go with these changes will be proposed. But this presentation is just to kind of ease you guys into the ideas, take any questions, and then see if I can make any other changes to the bylaw amendments for next week in preparation. So we can go ahead. So for RSO applications, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a reminder of who in SGA is like really overseeing this. So it is typically the Secretary of the Registry who kind of manages the whole process. And then the chair of UROC specifically works on preliminary review. And then once the decisions are given out, the chair of AA, along with their committee, conducts appeals if there are any appeals to the decisions. So this is a bit of a rundown on how the application worked last cycle, and I think in previous years as well. So it used to be that there was a new RSO interest form that would open in the spring, and be open all throughout the summer until the beginning of the school year. So it would be closed by the time we all arrive on campus. And that would be the first step that people would have to fill out. And then from there, I would have to send them the instructions on creating a draft for their application via email. From there, they would email their draft application to the chair of UROC and myself. And the chair of UROC would then reach out to them to schedule a meeting to review their draft with them and give them suggestions. And then finally, once they've completed that step, they would submit their final draft to me on Campus Pulse. And then I would give them their decision. So this is sort of a little bit of a timeline on how that went down last semester. So you can see that the interest form opened in February, was open all over the summer, closed August 31st, which is pretty much when we all arrive on campus or before. And then we had the draft review meetings all throughout September. And then I gave back decisions sometime in October. And along the way with this process, we ran into a lot of issues. We had to extend deadlines multiple times because the amount of applicants was so overwhelming, and was really only 2 people working on everything. So yeah, we'll get into that a little more in the next slide. So these were the numbers from the last application. You guys can just look at that for a second, and you can move on, Michael. And the main thing to note here is just the idea that the number of applications that we're getting is increasing at a very high rate, as you can see here. So yeah. So after successfully going through the application process and approving 42 new RSOs, I found a lot of key issues for improvement. Number one being that, of course, as I mentioned before, the number of RSOs is increasing. We see that there's a strain on the source, there's a strain on SGA staff, and it's just not sustainable. So the first thing I really wanted to work on was raising those requirements. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we addressed that in our changes. I also felt that the materials were very unclear. A lot of students in appeals and in meetings I had with them expressed to me that they were having trouble understanding what the expectations were. So that was one thing. And then the second thing was the timeline and the delegation. As I mentioned, it was really just me and Hai going through all of these applications, and it was extremely stressful, time consuming. So we want to change that as well. And then the other issue was that, as I mentioned, it used to open in spring. And of course, SGA staff transitions over the summer. So a lot of information got lost in that transition. There were things that maybe the past leadership did or didn't do or organized or didn't organize that made it difficult for me to pick up where they left. So there's that, and then the third thing is communication and infrastructure. So as I mentioned before, we used to have people reach out to Hai via email, send certain things via email, send some things to Campus Pulse. It was just a lot of emailing back and forth and sending documents that didn't need to be sent in an email. So I'll talk a little bit later about how we're going to address that as well. But any questions before I move on, just about how things happened last year? No? Okay. So the first step that I really took to address this was to send out a feedback form to all the applicants who made it to the final stage. And these were some of the responses. I mean, only got 12 responses, so it's not like perfect data, but it gave me a little bit of idea of what people were struggling with outside of the conversations I had with people. So you can see that some people struggled with the instructions in the checklist. Some people just had a bad experience overall drafting. And then some people said that they weren't given clear examples, as we can see in this one. It took people a long time, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it seems that there was just a lack of clarity in all of the materials. So on to the solution. So first and foremost, we have developed clearer application materials, which I will show you a preview of in a second. Basically, I just went through the entire checklist and rewrote every single sentence in it so that it would be just better, more clear. I added more sentences, more examples of what we're looking for. I added definitions in that we'll all see when we go through the bylaw amendments next week. And I created a template for the Constitution and an example strategic plan for people to look at. And then speaking about raising the bar, we decided to raise the minimum members that people have to apply with from 10 to 20. So that means that when people submit their application, they will have to submit a list of 20 UMass undergraduate students, their Spire IDs, and their emails. And we're hoping that that will make it so that there's just a higher barrier there and sort of subvert some of the amount and the volume. So yeah. Oh wait, Michael, go back. And then the other thing that we changed is the timeline and the delegation. So now the process will occur pretty much entirely in the fall semester. I am planning to, so essentially, if I mentioned earlier the interest form step, we're cutting that step out pretty much entirely and just having people submit their preliminary application straight away to Campus Pulse. Everything going forward now will be on Campus Pulse aside from the instructions themselves, but anything that people are submitting to us, our communications back with people in terms of feedback on their application will all be through Campus Pulse now, just so that it's one streamlined location. And for anyone who knows this, RSO documents live on Campus Pulse anyway, so it's just going to make it easier for the source to transfer that information in there once they're ready. And then the draft review will no longer be done like just by the chair of UROC. It will be done by the entire committee together. So something else I also changed in the bylaws is the position bylaws for Secretary of the Registry and for Chair of UROC to make it that it is a requirement for us to train UROC committee members at the beginning of the year on how to review an RSO application and make sure that everybody's on the same page there so that we can delegate, split up the applications to review between committee members. And hopefully that will make it faster and also more fair for the UROC chair. Yeah, I think let's move on. So here's a little bit of a preview on the updated materials. So there will be a one single instructions page on like a Google Doc that will include the entire timeline of the process, what the deadlines are. As you can sort of see here, we have it draft submission, final submission, and then once they get their decision, they'll have to get activated through the source. So I made sure to include that in there because a lot of people were shocked last year when they had to go through activation after getting accepted as well. It's got all the deadlines there, and also in this document will be the instructions on how to actually go about drafting their preliminary application, where to submit it, and then who to reach out for if they have questions. So that's one document that there will be. And then the second thing, which you can see up here, just the first page, is the new checklist. So the checklist is what we use to grade RSO applications and also what RSOs will use to prepare their draft applications. And I made sure to include now, aside from going through each section and fixing the language, I decided to include like a disclaimer at the top that we want to see every section in their constitution to be in the order that we've laid out for them in the checklist. One of the issues we encountered in the last cycle was that people had the information, but they maybe had it in a different section than where it was supposed to be. So really just reiterating that, making that clear, and then also making it clear that anything we ask for in verbatim has to be there in verbatim, which might seem obvious, but apparently it wasn't. So that, and then gender neutral pronouns, of course. And yeah, and then we have the template constitution in there as well. And then, yeah. So any questions about these materials before I move on? Nope. Okay. So that is pretty much a review of all the changes. Of course, like I said, we will go into them in more depth when we have the bylaw amendments up. But I just want to make it clear to people that this is really just the beginning. The changes that are made in this process are just a few of the ones that we discussed in depth. I've had hours and hours of conversations with people with really great ideas on how we can make this process even better and raise the bar for RSOs even higher. It just wasn't practical for those to be carried out in time for the next application cycle. These materials have to be ready on the SGA website by the end of the semester, ideally. So we weren't able to implement everything that I wanted to implement, but some of my ideas are to create a VPN neutral way to prevent RSOs that are similar to an existing RSO from being created. But you do run into a lot of complications there because, you know, students can, and rightfully so, argue that their RSO is somewhat different from an existing one in one way or another. And it's just really about finding a fair way to do that that doesn't involve any bias of any kind. And then, of course, the RSG, which I'm not sure if that has been talked about at Senate a lot, but that is another initiative that we were working on this year that I think is going to continue to be worked on. But the idea with that is that there's a second type of RSO that is designed for groups that are smaller, that don't want to put on giant events. They just sort of want tabling space. They just want to be on Campus Pulse. And they also wouldn't be able to request like the massive budgets that RSOs do. So that's another idea. Another idea is to require applicants to have faculty sponsors. That is an option at the moment, but it's not required. I think we'd have to look into like what the impact that would be on the student body, if that would be something that would actually make a change, or if people would just ask their professor, hey, can you sign this? And it wouldn't really help anything. The other thing could be requiring RSOs to create progress reports that someone is checking to make sure that they are actually completing the goals on their mission statement and their strategic plan. And if they weren't, creating some sort of fair sort of punishment system with warnings there. And then again, improved delegation. As I said, we have spread out the task of the UROC chair to the UROC committee a little bit. Of course, that's still going to be a lot of work for the UROC chair. But as of now, the secretary of the registry will still be reading all final applications by themselves. And I would love to hear like any suggestions people have on how we can do that a different way, just to make it a little more fair. And then, yeah, the last thing I do want to say is that this is a big question of mine, and I know might be a question of a lot of you guys, but like the question of whether these changes and the minimum requirement going from 10 to 20 will apply to existing RSOs. And I think that that is, like I said, a big question of mine that I'm not too sure what the answer will be. I mean, I don't have any plans to hold current RSOs to these new standards at the moment. Of course, they are audited through random selection every year to update their constitutions to these requirements. So maybe we'll see some of these changes get implemented then. But I just want to also reiterate that when we're brainstorming things for new RSOs, we need to make sure that they're things that can be implemented into existing RSOs. So, yeah.
Couple things to quickly add. Oh, that popped on quick. A couple things to quickly add. I just wanted to mention that assuming there are no major setbacks, you're going to be voting on the reform proposal for the RSO application process for new RSOs next Wednesday at Senate. So if you have questions, please either ask them tonight, or if you don't ask them tonight, please reach out to us as soon as possible, because we want to make sure we can get all concerns addressed before there's a vote on it. I do want to note that this final slide, these are just like more so future proposals. These will not be things that are considered next week. I would say that the reforms that we are making right now are inspired by things that we discovered throughout this past year's process. It became fairly evident that the process we currently have is not efficient. It was very stressful for Secretary Merchant and our Chair Tran and Chair Lay to have to navigate that process. So that was another factor into it. And also, it was not the best experience for every RSO. So that's something we're kind of trying to fix. This is not the first year that's been a problem. This has been something that has been a concern every single year that I've been here. It was a problem last year. And I also want to note that this is just a starting place. These future steps, for example, are just some ideas based on discussions that we've had. I would say that the next secretary of the registry and next year's leadership, should definitely consider some of these ideas. And I do think that more action is going to need to be taken next year if we really want to make this system great. But I think that this is a great starting spot, and this is going to address a major issue that we face. It's going to make this process a lot better going into next year. So I just want to lastly thank Secretary Merchant for her hard work on this. This is something that's been in the works for a really long time, all year. There's been a lot of consultation that's been done both within the SGA and externally. This is really something that was not made hastily, I should say, and this is really one of our primary goals as an administration coming in. So this is something that I'm really excited that we're here today, and we'll be happy to take any questions, and then hopefully we can get this to a point where everybody's ready to vote in favor of it next week if it's not already there.
I just want to also add to this is a start, and also right now we do have the external reviewers that are helping audit our financial and RSO processes. So once we get their recommendations at the end of this year, we're gonna leave the next year's administration with recommendations that we take from gathering the report, and then hopefully leave a transition for the next year's leadership team to further expand on these reforms.
Secretary Merchant, you already kind of referenced this just a little bit. So I don't think you guys aren't thinking about this, but it's my one main concern. With RSOs that are under 20 right now, many of them are under 20 because they choose to be. I can think of just my community within the Acapella Union. Many of those groups choose to stay under 20 because of the sound. It changes if you get over a certain amount of people. In the comedy league, it's a very similar thing. Having 20 people on stage all at once is very difficult. I'm sure there are other clubs that have a similar situation, but those are the ones that I'm in, and that's the ones that I understand. And I don't know if those clubs specifically, those RSOs, are able to go to 20 or above 20. And I think in regards to an audit, potentially having, I have no idea if their RSO status would be taken away or revoked. It doesn't seem like that's what the plan is, and I don't think that's what we want to do at all. But if we're changing the bylaws to do this, then if we have to follow our processes, then that is what would be happening. And I'm trying to think, if we work towards RSGs, then would these groups be forced to become RSGs and then be forced to miss out on funding and then have to fundraise everything? Or are we going to have an entirely new designation for groups that can't get to this 20 marker?
I think that's definitely something that we've thought about. And I would really just say that I have no plans to hold existing RSOs to that requirement of 20 at the moment. I think as of now, these changes are supposed to be just for new RSOs, because at this point, we really have to do something to combat at least the increase. There's nothing we can do at this point really to decrease the current amount of RSOs in a fair way. I'm open to hear ideas, but that might be something that's hard to do. So I think the idea is really just for this to be a threshold for new RSOs, and then maybe
we can have some conversations with like Chair Tran about if he's going to consider that in the auditing process. But my recommendation would be not to.
I do want to add, just real quickly, reiterating, this administration does not have any intention to enforce this on existing RSOs. Now, I can't speak for what the next administration might do after June 1st. It's out of my hands. But as long as, under this administration, we will not be enforcing this on current RSOs. I do want to note that I hear your concerns, and it's definitely something that I'd like to talk about more. I just think right now, especially in regards to new RSO applications, we are so overrun that some sort of action needs to be taken. And we did do some substantial research of other universities, and we found that a lot of them did have higher requirements. Additionally, we have faced calls from both, university administration, from our source advisors, and even from our officers here in the SGA, that there is a need to increase this number because the current way of doing things is just not sustainable.
Just to quickly add on, and I think that's why like the recommendations we get from the external reviewers would be really important, because I think that's like a good concern for like long term for those clubs. So I think maybe seeing what recommendations we get from external reviewers and how we can address that long term problem, because right now there is a concern that there are some clubs where the mission statements are so very similar, but it's like, wait a second, is that, it's like a fine line between, like, it seems like they may be similar but not, so trying to balance that. So I think taking recommendations that we get from those external reviewers will be really handy to how to deal with this long term.
I just want to add one thing too. We've actually been told by some of our SACL people that the strain is so bad that there had been in the previous cycle some people were actually calling for no new RSOs to be accepted, which is something we as an SGA push back against, because one, that's not really the proper way of doing things, and there could be some legal concerns with that. And two, we also didn't want that to be the case, but it also has become clear that this was coming from SACL, so this was coming from above us. So it is also becoming clear that if there isn't substantial reforms in the near future, we may have some people coming in from above taking potentially dramatic actions to curb this.
I'm going to go to Chair Shaman just because I saw her hand up first.
Whoa, sorry, that was really loud. I guess the question I had for you, well, I also work with a lot of RSOs, so I can speak to a bunch of these issues. I've also heard a lot of these concerns from SACL, and the number of groups has increased this year. The number of groups that asked for funding increased this year, and we had to pull. Well, we were up till 3 a.m. reviewing budgets on Saturday to finish on time. Let's just say that, and that's happened on more than one occasion. I guess I recognize the concerns, but I guess what I'm asking is, because I know we're looking at other schools. You mentioned that we've been benchmarking. I know we have the external reviewer who's auditing our process. And I completely hear you, Rania, when you're saying that you're not going to be holding current existing groups to this standard. But I guess, how would that work within the auditing process? Because we're constantly, like every single year, there's a constitutional audit that happens within UROC. And then the second question I have is, when you were benchmarking and when you were looking at these other schools that had these higher caps, they must have these like arts groups, like a cappella groups. So what were they doing for these groups? Because the concern Senator Nevins brought up is very in particular to these a cappella groups. So we're not the only school to have groups like this, right? So what do you know what those universities were doing? And maybe that's something that the external reviewer can answer, but within your own research, did you see anything?
No, I haven't had the chance to talk to other universities about like specifically groups under 10 or smaller groups. But I think both of those questions are definitely things that we need to look into. I don't have an answer to those at the moment right now. I do know we actually had a meeting with the source this morning where they shared with us that other universities sometimes have like a committee that is like not within their SGA, so like that, so that the burden is not on students to make the decision, but there are committees in other universities made up of like admin and other people that can make the decision on whether or not an RSO should be accepted based on if it's too similar to the current list. I just am personally very concerned about that and concerned about that decision, like going out of the SGA or even staying within the SGA, because I just don't know how that could be done without bias. Every group has something special to them, and I want to make sure that that's protected while also not having a crazy amount of ourselves.
I do want to note, and granted, I'm not really too big in the acapella world myself. You do not want to hear me sing, but essentially, a couple of just ideas that I would float is, maybe potentially it could be a situation where I know some groups have like an A team and a B team, or a situation where maybe somebody has reserve members in case someone gets sick or somebody, I know that there are, I think, possibilities for ways that groups could come up to a number of 20. And I think, too, that might even make these activities a bit more inclusive for more people, because I'm assuming these are audition-based activities that, you get in if you're good. Maybe they could do something like that. I think that could be, I think there are certainly ways for groups to meet that number. I also want to note that currently, I don't like this at all, but currently the attendance policies are so lenient that people do write down their friends. I don't recommend doing that, and that's something that I probably want to see fixed under possibly the next administration. But I do think that groups, there are definitely innovative ways that groups could get around that. And, obviously we don't want to place an extra burden on groups, but by not doing anything, that is going to hurt a bunch of groups. So, we have to make decisions.
Senator Nevins.
I guess I definitely agree with you. I think that this is absolutely the solution to this issue. There really is no other way to go about it. But in terms of protecting current groups, are we considering, changing the auditing process in regards to this specific part of it, so that we aren't, when we go to audit a group, potentially putting them in a situation where their RSO status comes into question? Because if that's what we're saying now while we're proposing this policy and proposing it to the Senate, then I guess in terms of the resolution that will be coming up next week and in terms of our bylaws right now, is that a consideration in terms of grandfathering the current groups that are under 20 and making sure that their RSO statuses are safe and that it's just for new RSOs, not the current ones?
And I think that would be something that we would have to have a further conversation with. Hopefully I could have like a better answer for you next week. That's also something that I have to talk to the chair of UROC who oversees the auditing with. But again, even if RSOs are audited and they don't meet the requirements, they usually just get a warning. They usually don't get frozen anyway. So yeah, but it's a good question that I think.
I do want to note that, that is, the chair of UROC does have a lot of discretion over how that process is facilitated. I do want to note that is something that we could certainly look into. I think I'd want to have a conversation with the incoming administration, President-elect Borowski and President-elect Gianna. I think that would be probably the best case scenario, especially because they're going to be overseeing this process next year. So I'd want to make sure that they are looped in and included. So maybe that's something that we could talk to them about in the next couple of days and, see if there's, how we want to proceed and hopefully have a better answer for you before next week.
Let's do a couple more questions, and then I think we can take these questions outside of the meeting. There's still a week until that the amendments will be considered. So.
Back.
Good evening. This has kind of been a scary word in America, but my concern is equity. And from what I'm hearing with this number requirement, I don't hear equity. And so my question is, and President Humphreys alluded to it, a tendency policy. There's enough smart, brilliant people in this room. We could come up with legislation that forces RSOs to implement an attendance policy, because if they say they have 10 members and they only have 3 showing up every meeting, that's not 10 members. So where are we with that instead of this 20 delegate plan?
Yes, we discussed this actually in the Registry Reform Task Force. And it was hard for us to come up with a reliable way for us to actually track attendance for every RSO. Like I said, there's 340 of them. Who is going to be checking the attendance of those 340 RSOs in a reliable manner? It could be something where it's like a hand select of them are chosen, like part of the audit process maybe. But then it's also like, how do we make these RSOs take attendance? How do we make sure that they're not just saying that people showed up when they didn't? It's kind of like you run into a lot of issues with that as well. But I definitely think that's a great idea as well. And yeah, if it's not already on here, I would have included that on there too. I think that's a great idea for future as well.
I'm fully behind doing an attendance policy. I think the main thing that was kind of the point of struggle for us during our conversation was just, what method do we use? What's most secure? How often is attendance taken? What do we do for clubs that don't, have traditional meetings that are more do like practices? Which personally, I think that they're maybe working through Campus Pulse with the source. We could develop a system. The only problem is, I know the source is currently very, very overwhelmed. So it's more so finding who the personnel is going to be, because our registry people are overwhelmed, the source is overwhelmed, so we have to kind of figure out who's able to take on that role. But that's definitely a discussion I'd like to continue to have for the rest of this administration, and I hope it's something that, if it's not completed in this administration, that it will be something that can happen early in next administration, because I do think that we need to be stricter with our attendance, because I do know for a fact that there are groups who put people on their members list who don't show up. The reason I know that, because I'm pretty sure I've been added to lists before that I didn't even know I was put on until later. So, yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned something about some RSOs having like an A team, B team, and reserves. But my problem with that, for context, I'm a part of the UMass mock trial team, and we have around 3 teams, and we have to compete in tournaments at different universities across New England, and even recently we went to DC and we went to Chicago. Obviously, that is a lot of money. In order to have this 20 limited, at least 20 members in an RSO, this is essentially for any teams that compete or travel of any type. With having these external, more teams and reserves, we're essentially asking people to put more, ask for more money for the budget that we have already established that we don't have. So my question is a little bit more, I just wanted to say that point because I feel like it's competitive organizations are usually not talked about in that, at least in the Senate. And so my question is more on the bylaws. For this bylaw amendment, will this bylaw proposal have the at least 20 member clause?
Yes, the bylaw proposal will have the at least 20 member clause for applying RSOs, not for current RSOs, as we've mentioned before. And I also think that if this were to be applied more broader to existing RSOs, or if they're an applying RSO that wants to have a competitive team, we are not saying that all 20 people on their list have to travel for the competition, just that they have to sort of be part of the RSO in any way, and that could mean going to an interest meeting, that could mean going to a Gen Bod meeting, that could mean being an assistant of sorts. I know for the org that I'm involved in, there is I think 9 committees, and not everybody is doing the same thing. Not everybody travels to the same places, and we have a general body as well that could account for that membership. But yeah, I think really the thing is it's not going to be applied to all RSOs as of right now.
I also want to note that the Senate does have the authority to amend. I'm putting that out there because it seems like most of the concerns come down to one part of this proposal. I would not want this whole proposal to fail over one section. So with that being said, you do have the authority to propose an amendment next week. I would recommend against it, just given where we're at. I can say we did talk about 15. So we have talked about, we talked about 15. We ultimately decided to go 20. I would say, if someone thinks that they're, when we get to next week after we hash everything out, if someone still thinks that the 20 is too high or could be too much of a burden on certain groups, then I would recommend proposing amendment, let the Senate decide on it. If the Senate decides it's too high, then still goes through. If they decide it's not, if they don't decide that, then hopefully it still goes through. But I will say that there are going to be some people, particularly in the SACL source world, who will not be very happy if that number comes down. But I do want the Senate to know that that is a power that they do have.
I'm just going to add one thing to that. If you do plan to amend, which is absolutely right, just be in touch with the sponsor and just try to collaborate at all. I mean, it's supposed to be a collaborative process. So that's my recommendation. Amendments usually go better if it's not something that's completely out of the blue for the sponsorship. But we'll do one more question, then we'll wrap up because we do have a student.
I just wanted to add on before we get to another question. I understand people's concerns in the point about equity, but I guess kind of my question or kind of maybe statement to Senate is more so every RSO is supposed to be open to everyone in the campus community. That is the main thing. So RSOs aren't supposed to be trying to purposely remain smaller and be exclusionary of students. So that's one thing. But the second thing I did want to mention is that we're not planning on having this be implemented for current RSOs right away. That's not the recommendation we're going to leave to the future people. But secondly, I do think that the 20 is a really good floor for new RSOs because I don't think it's equitable when we have a group of people that supposed to be 10, but they only have maybe about 3 or 4, and they're making a big budget request and they don't actually use that money and use the spaces that they're booking, etc.
Also, really quickly want to say, keep in mind that the more RSOs that get accepted, the less resources there are for the existing RSOs and for all the other RSOs. So just really keep that in mind. And last question.
I think my question is partially gonna answer some of the other people's questions. Currently this year for URock, we didn't check how many members were in each club that we audited. So I'm looking at the current or the previous, I guess, current constitution and strategic plan checklist, and nowhere in the checklist it says that there's there's a requirement amount that's really just for the application. And so I guess my question is, in the new constitution application materials or just the constitution checklist, are you planning on adding that 20 member requirement? And then therefore will that be used in the audit, or will that just kind of be for application?
So actually, the 20 member requirement is not even in the Constitution. We take the 20 members on a separate page. So in the Campus Pulse application, there will be a page where people submit their Constitution, their strategic plan, and then there's another page where they give us information about the membership of their org. That includes telling us what their executive board is, telling us what their membership is. And that's because the Constitution is not supposed to be the Constitution is meant to be a guiding document for the RSO itself. It's not really supposed to be like something that SGA uses to like check them. It's just the reason we do constitutional auditing is to make sure that they have all of those guiding processes for themselves in there correctly. Like, for example, how to remove a member of their e-board if they run into a situation, how to make amendments to their constitution if they want to change something. So the Constitution is meant to be a document that is like there for the entirety of the RSO's lifespan. So like, no, there won't be a list of the 20 members on the RSO's constitution. And hopefully that'll be like more clear when I go through the bylaw amendments themselves.
I think it seems evident to me too that, aside from this proposal, we do need to figure out a way to better enforce the membership requirement, whether it be 10, whether it be 15, whether it be 20, because clearly the enforcement right now is weak, and it has been weak since I've been here. And I think in addition to that, it's like, I think that was it.
All right. Well, thank you for presenting on this. Again, if you have any additional questions, shoot them an email, go to their office hours, meet after Senate. If you plan to propose amendments, collaborate. Don't just, surprise people, because that, it's better to be collaborative. With that said, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole. Chair Centenaro. Okay. All those in favor of adjourning committee of the whole, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All those abstain say abstain. You guys have it. Accordingly, the Senate will be in order, and the committee of the whole previously called in session stands adjourned. All right. On to the remainder of the agenda. No special orders were submitted to the Office of the Speaker. The Senate has no unfinished business, meaning the Senate will now consider S92, a motion to fund the Students of Caribbean Ancestry at $12,280. This motion was reviewed by the DIA Fund Committee on March 12th and was reported favorably. The chair now recognizes the sponsorship and representatives of the group. Let's welcome everyone up. Make sure we give this group our undivided attention and to stop any chit chat in the chamber, please. All right.
Hi guys, it's me again. So I'm here with the student of Caribbean Ancestry, and they are going to talk to you about their event coming up on April 27th. It's called Juve. Once again, give them your attention, and remember, don't forget about like our presentation that me and Maya had with you guys. So equity over equality, but also like, just VPN. Yeah, that. So yeah, pay attention and also show up to the event. So I'm gonna give them the mic. So listen to them.
The VPN resources are the folders linked into the supplemental material folder. So please review that before engaging in any questions. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiana Brown. I'm the Vice President of the Students of Caribbean Ancestry. And what we do as an org is celebrate, preserve, and share the diverse and rich Caribbean cultures on campus. And we aim to create a safe space for Caribbean students on campus where they feel seen and heard.
Hello. I hope this works. Yeah. Hi, my name is Josie. I'm not sure if this works, but it does. Hello? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Josie. I'm one of the treasurers on the SOCA, the Student of Caribbean Ancestry, and I'm not sure who's doing the slides. If you could please, yes. So over the presentation, I'm going to just do an introduction, an overview of the event, the logistics part, and the budget that we are requesting. So please skip. Yeah. Student of Caribbean Ancestry is dedicated to educating, celebrating, and spreading Caribbean culture and sharing the richness of our great heritage to the UMass population. So this is not just a club for the Caribbean students on campus, but it's also a club to everyone on campus. We're here to educate. A lot of people don't know what's going on in the Caribbean right now or what's happening, and we love like letting people know because there's so much countries in the Caribbean. We all just think there's the big ones, but there's the little ones that allow us to share our culture. Next, please. Our Juve event is happening on Sunday, April 27th 2025. It's happening from 12 to 5 p.m. It's in Lot 33, and we are expecting around 1,100 to 1,200 people. So overview of Juve, it is a vibrant cultural event inspired by Caribbean carnival traditions. And in this, we celebrate freedom, unity, and cultural heritage through energetic music, dance, and community engagement. Within this, we feature Caribbean artists and performers, DJs, hosts, which with traditional foods like patties, if you guys have heard, plantains. We do things like that people from our culture, like we don't get that a lot in UMass, so we look forward to the events like this so we can like have a little taste of our culture. And in this we would do paint and powder because in the Caribbean we're very much about like colorful aspects, so we're very much looking forward to like just having fun, taking a time and a break from our stressful of like the university of our finals, everything. We just need that little break. And the purpose of this is to provide an authentic cultural experience for the students, not just the Caribbean students, but for everyone around. We love to invite everyone. Whenever we do tabling downstairs, we encourage everyone to come. And this is also to commemorate Caribbean heritage while promoting unity and a cultural exchange among students from all backgrounds. So this is why Juve matters to our campus community. It's for celebrating Caribbean roots in like Juve. So Juve honors century-old traditions rooted in Caribbean ancestry. It allows students from Caribbean descents to express their pride in their roots, and while educating others about the rich cultural practices that shape their identity. This fosters the campus inclusivity. Juve is a welcoming students from all different backgrounds. Juve creates a space of unity and cross-cultural understanding. It strengthens UMass Amherst commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It builds a stronger Caribbean community on campus. Juve provides a sense of belonging and connection for Caribbean students, helping them feel seen, heard, and valued in a predominantly non-Caribbean space. It offers opportunity for collaboration. So Juve brings together artists and student performers on campus and outside of campus and campus organizations. It sparks partnership and cultural exchange, encouraging future events and dialogue across communities. It fosters some student well-being. Like I was saying, around this time is really just final season, so we look forward to an event that can like relieve the stress. So this takes place, like I said, during finals. It's a good time to unwind, reduce stress, and boost their mental health through communal celebration and artistic expression. Our marketing plan for Juve is usually through social media campaigns. We usually have a photographer and videographer that comes during this event. They take pictures, they take videos that we can use for the upcoming year to get new students and outside students just hyped up about the event. We do have flyers that we place all around the campus, all around the residence halls, and we have campus outreach through word of mouth and just social media, that too. Our target audience is Caribbean students, faculties, and other students from our community interested in learning about Caribbean culture and students seeking a fun, stress-relieving activity. For fundraisers, SoCA usually hosts a beef patty and flag sales to raise an awareness for Juve and give the community a flavorful preview of the vibrant cultural experience the event will offer. So this process usually begins the fall semester. The summer semester too, we will talk about it briefly, and then fall and winter semester we go more deep and broad into the aspects. So in winter 24, after we had our other events, we usually discuss ways to create an engaging and impactful event. We're working closely with different dance teams, Caribbean performers, DJs, and traditional food vendors to ensure an authentic and engaging celebration. And in the beginning of spring 25, we began to strategize for ideas how to use our budget revenue from fundraising and activities, including our beef patty sales, our Valentine's fundraiser, and our flag sales, and grant supports to help fund the event actively engage the campus community. And in mid-spring, we usually go through the process of applying for grants, finalizing bookings with performers and DJs, refining the visual elements to ensure a cohesive experience. Additionally, we begin to purchase our event supplies and actively promote through social media campaigns and tabling around campus. And then the day of Juve is when we're just ensuring all the setups. We're assigning roles to our e-board. We are making sure all the logistics are in place for a smooth and successful celebration. And our risk plan for this, we usually have EMTs. We will honestly have 4 EMTs from 12 to 5. They'll be on site just in case a medical emergency happens. They're hired at $20 per hour for 5 hours minimum, estimated around $400. And UMPD, we will be requesting 2 UMPD officers, but this is mostly sergeants. We will have regular officers too, and maybe a lieutenant, depending how much officers that we have. This is just an estimate of 46.77 to 61.65, just because, like I said, we have different officers in this. And then we have event security. We usually hire GMCS because, as I said, this is a big event for the people on campus. There's people that try to sneak in, so we just try to make sure that everyone is in a safe environment. And a crowd management, just to make sure that we're ensuring the fire code compliance and monitoring the crowd flow. Like I said, a big event, we want to make sure everyone's safe.
And the estimated cost for the GMCs for this year is $2,516.
Yes. I'm not sure if you can press the link on there. That can go in more deeply. I have the logistics. I don't know if you guys seen a bunch of logistics. They're very long, so I couldn't really add it onto here, but I did have the link if it works, hopefully. But if not, that I can also send it out to you guys. Okay, good. Oh, okay. We could send that. We can send that to the SGA provider where it can go into more details. But that really just sets out the day of what we're doing, how we're going about this event.
Can we try to do that before we vote? Just so senators have all the information. We could work on putting it in the supplemental material folder, or maybe an email could just to the Senate chain.
This is just basically what I went over for the risk plans, the day of the event, and then just go down where we talk about the event description, and then how many UMPD that we will need. This is the contact information for our e-board. Yeah, no, this is just like the stuff that I kind of already went over.
Added it to the supplemental material folder.
I do have to say, like, a good amount of the chunk of this presentation was taken out of this logistics plan, plus what we had to write up for the grant. So a lot of the stuff that I have said is in this. So I truly don't. This is really for your case if you want to see and like check of what we said, just to correct us and anything like that. But yeah. Move on.
This is also the logistical plan that is sent to the source and approved by advisors and source members as well. So
Yeah. So if any senator has a question, we can do it during the question period. Yeah. Yeah.
Budget breakdown. So we are requesting $12,280 for this event. Just from the little that I gave you guys based on security and risk, that's not even half of what we're putting into this event. So this is just a portion. We are asking for this for the artists, the DJs, and the photographer and sound system. But regardless of everything else, we're covering it on ourselves from SOCA. And the amount that SOCA is covering for the whole event is around
Roughly $46,000.
Yes. And we are asking for this grant for, like I said, the DJs, catering, event supply, security. Without it, SOCA would need to rely more heavily on fundraising, which on this campus is kind of hard because not a lot of people is as engaging as you would want with the ESOs. So yeah, that's all. Now we're good for questions if anyone's
Thank you for presenting. Any questions for the group? Any questions? Senator Brumgar.
Thanks for giving this presentation. It sounds like you guys have done this in previous years. So how many people do you usually have coming to your event?
Roughly about 1,000, but sometimes it increased depending on each year. But for this year, we are expecting 1,200 attendees.
Are they mostly UMass students or people from the community?
It's kind of like, I would say, half and half. We do, like I said, we do broadcast this towards like a lot of people in Massachusetts. So there is a good amount of people around Massachusetts that come to UMass, and a lot of the people from the community come, like for the attendees come from the UMass community too, and schools around too.
Just to add, or ticketing prices allow students from the 5 colleges the same price as UMass students, and or DJs usually do bring the crowd from the Boston schools that they attend. So we do have a mixed variation of people who attend Juve.
Questions? Senator Mello.
I don't know if I missed it. How much do tickets cost? Like, what's the breakdown?
Oh, so tickets usually cost around $14 to $18 because we do have pre-sale, regular sale, and then sometimes at the door would be a little more.
So for right now, tickets are $18 for regular students. So that's UMass and 5 colleges. And for everyone else is $22. And at the door it's $30.
Other questions? Senator Rue. The microphone.
I mean, this is more of a question for you guys, and it's more a show of my ignorance than anything. Do you know how much money we still have in the fund?
Point of clarification.
We have a little bit above 34,000.
That's pre this allocation. Yeah. Senator Nevins.
I'm just. Never mind, I answered my own question.
Fair enough. All right. Any other questions? Senator Prabhakar.
Just explain how you came to the numbers of like UMPD and security that you need. Is that standard something that source told you to do, or how did you make this decision?
So those
So the rates for UMPD, EMTs, or GMCS is actually standard rates that is for every event on campus. It comes from the source, and they usually just base it on like attendance. So because their event is like about like more than I think 550 students, it is a little bit more. And then on top of that, so it's a weekend event, so they have to add like weekend rates on top of that. So it's kind of like a given, and then they just base it on that.
Like the source outlines, if you have more than 550 people, you need like 2 UMPD officers, etc.
Just to add to her question or answer it more, if you look on the logistical plan, there's a little bit more detail about it under the UMPD and the like general GM.
Any additional questions? All right. Well, yes. Sharon Yanko.
Thank you guys for sharing. Where can we buy tickets if we want to go?
So if you're interested in buying tickets, we do have our Instagram page, UMass Soka, and there's a link provided under that will go straight to the ticket page where you can get your tickets. We would love to have you there.
You can also go to the box office in the Fine Arts Center, I believe, and you won't have to pay the $1 fee. Yeah.
Senator Walker Hoover.
Thank you guys for this presentation. Could you tell us who the artist y'all bringing out is?
So the artists are Fada Fox and King Bubba. If you're a true Soka fan, you know them.
I wanted it to be a surprise, but you know.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. Does there exist a need for debates on S92? All right. With no indication of a need for debates, the questions on the passage of S92, a motion to fund the student of Caribbean ancestry at $12,280. All those in favor of passing the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All those abstain say abstain. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. All right. The Senate will now consider S93, a bill to amend Title VI of the General Bylaws of the Student Government Association. This motion was reviewed by the Ways and Means Committee on April 10th and was reported favorably. The chair will now read the entirety of the motion. S93, whereas the current SGA budget as an agency and pursuant to agency guidelines, though it is the governance body and provides a different role in service to students and the campus community, and whereas the SGA fundamentally should support students and student groups through transparency, accountability, and outreach, both through finances and advocacy, and whereas the approval of the SGA executive operating budget does not require communication to the entire SGA undergraduate senate, raising concerns regarding fiscal transparency and checks and balances, and whereas the SGA needs specific and detailed guidelines pertaining to its unique mission to hold the body accountable, but also allow for diverse support of students and ESOs. Therefore, be it enacted effective July 1st, 2025, that the following be added as a new chapter to Title VI of the SGA General Bylaws, and that all subsequent chapters be redesignated accordingly. All right. The sponsorship is now recognized to make a factual description.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So just a little quick overview. As some of you don't know because you joined this semester, but last semester, when I was making the budget, we actually did not have a budget process to follow because a few years ago, they designated SGA as outside of the agency process, but did not set up an actual process for us to go through. So this is my proposal for that process so that future secretaries of finance have something to work off of and then don't have to be kind of left stranded like I was. So I'm just going to go quickly through it, quick overview, and just hold your questions till the end, please, so I can get through all of it. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So starting off, obviously the Secretary of Finance will be responsible for preparing the budget. And so this part is very important. The SGA budget may not exceed 6% of the annual total revenue and beginning balances of the SATF, which I included because there were a lot of concerns with, having the SGA fund itself, meaning that it kind of could lead to any sort of inflation of the budget or corruption without a lot of checks. So this is kind of a way to check that. It can be increased to 7.5 with a 3/4 vote of Senate. Those numbers that I picked are based off the previous 4 years of SGA allocations, which I got from Sackle Finance. So those are just a number I quickly ran and picked for ease of read and convenience of reading it, just because they're nice numbers to look at, I guess. And then the second provision says the SGA budget may not be increased more than 5% at any given fiscal year. this can be changed to at least 7.5, again with a 3/4 vote of Senate. So this prevents raising the SATF fee in order to raise the SGA budget, basically, because we don't want the SGA to look at this and say, oh, well, instead, let's just raise the fee by $100 so we can raise the SGA budget. So that prevents that sort of thing from happening. And then the third provision sets out what the budget will be. So mandatory spending and discretionary spending, which will be described later. So discretionary spending will follow the following process. It is reviewed by Ways and Means, as every other budget is. So as other things, other groups go through, the line items must be essential to SGA carrying out its mission. They have to support fee-paying students, ESOs, and SGA outreach directly or indirectly. They must support the professional obligations and responsibilities of SGA members carrying out their official duties. The spending can't violate the sort of conduct, state or federal law, and they must adhere to the ineligible line item requests, which are later in the bylaw. That's all stuff that other groups have to follow, very similar. You'll notice that this is pretty similar to what other groups follow. So this is how they will vote on the discretionary budget. So each line item will be submitted like a budget is in Campus Post 4 Ways and Means. The line items will be individual. They can't be rounded. They have to have a description stating each of the things I just said in the first subsection. They'll have to have a cost breakdown and attached evidence outside of the SGA. They will then look at each item, make sure they have all of that. And then after they look at that and they will vote on it to recommend the discretionary budget to Senate. Although if they don't act for some reason, I don't know why they wouldn't, but just in case, it will just be sent to Senate immediately. And then Secretary of Finance will present it to Senate. Senate will vote whether or not to pass the budget. The discretionary budget needs a 3/4 vote of the Senate. That was required. That was suggested by Ways and Means. That number, I didn't really have a feeling either way about that, so that's why it's 3/4. And if it fails, the Secretary of Finance will have 2 weeks to readjust the discretionary budget and submit it again, just so that we don't have zero money in the discretionary budget. And if it fails again, then the Senate will have to open it at that Senate meeting that it fails a second time and vote on each individual line item, so that they'll, with a 3/4 vote for each item individually. Mandatory spending is everything not in discretionary spending. So they can only be done when the budget is presented to Senate, not by Ways and Means. And they have to be done through a 2/3 vote. This is a number I use because payroll right now, the mandatory budget, as you'll see, is mainly payroll. Payroll cannot be changed without a 2/3 vote of Senate right now. So that's where I got that number. That's all saying the same thing. Motions may only be. So the mandatory budget will be effective after the presentation of Senate. It's meaning that it's just saying that when you vote on it and pass the discretionary spending, the mandatory spending passes as well. And it will be payroll, which is funded at minimum wage as per the bylaws. An elective fund, which is $5,000 to the office of the Speaker and the President, and an outreach fund, which I can talk a little bit more about later, but basically they're just there as backups in case for some reason a discretionary budget is not passed. They will at least have money to spend on things like the printer, the bike share, which we have a contract with, so we have to pay them, and office supplies and things that require us to function. And then the timeline is set out in these bylaws. Secretary of Finance shall present the discretionary budget by the second Friday of November, which is very similar to the time frame I did this year. And then the Ways and Means Committee will have 2 weeks to vote on it, so it'd be like the first budget they review. Kind of a good practice to have, especially because I would hope the Secretary of Finance would do a pretty good job on the budget. And then the SGA budget would be presented to Senate, a review of the mandatory budget, and approval of discretionary budget. This is a very important distinction because you're just reviewing what's in the mandatory budget. You're not approving the mandatory budget because that's kind of already pre-approved because it's mandatory. And then again, if it exceeds 7.5 for some reason, like maybe the SATF is lower than we thought it would be, the Ways and Means Committee would cut it down to 7.5%. And then these are non-eligible items. They're all the same as the bylaw, as the guidelines are, except for the exceptions, which if you scroll down to the bottom, there's exceptions to a few items, and they can receive funding for giveaways if they're essential to the mission, essential to the purpose of a public event, beneficial to the campus community, and going to fee-paying students and or ESOs, excluding this SGA. They can receive funding for non-personalized uniforms and costumes if they're maintained in inventory and reused from year to year. That's an exception that exists for other RSOs as well. And the SGA may receive funding for private events if they clearly demonstrate that the provision of the private event is essential to their mission, beneficial to the campus community. There's a pertinent reason which requires the event to be private, and the event is intended to support a specific group, excluding the SGA. And they can get funding for food, again, essential to the mission, essential to the purpose of the public event, and beneficial to the campus community. And that is the end of it. So
Chair Stain.
Hey guys, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. I just wanted to fully drive the point home that Dylan worked extra hard on this along with his treasurer, and we had 2 separate sessions with the Ways and Means Committee. A first one was a review session where we went through these bylaws together to make sure that this was a funding process that we were all comfortable with, and a lot of our senators were in support of this. They saw a lot of the effort that Secretary Bellery made to make sure that there's caps in place to make sure we're not inflating our budget and to keep the SGA accountable. And so we had a whole review session. We made some edits, yes, but he was very open to amendments. And this is a process both groups were comfortable with. And then we had a second meeting, I believe it was last week, where we actually did vote on this. So I just want to talk about what the process looked like from our perspective. But yes, Secretary Bellery and I also met, by the way, in one of our own separate financial sessions, regular meetings where we sat down and went over this to make sure this was a document and a process I was comfortable with as well. He worked really hard on this, so just really want to drive the point home that this was not something that was written overnight. This was something that we all put a lot of thought into. And I mean, we can't predict the future, but it looks pretty good from my perspective. And, you know, whoever's the next Secretary of Finance, they're just going to, if they find any issues with it, they can amend it even further. But we think this is a great starting point.
thanks, Maya. Okay, questions? Right.
Senator Mellon.
I'm just curious about some of the choices in the writing of this. I think the ideas look really solid. It's my understanding that in our bylaws, we don't typically have anything bolded, anything italics. We really rarely give any examples of anything. We rarely say et cetera, and et cetera is 4 times in here. So I'm just curious, like, did you look at the current bylaws while writing this, or like, what is this modeled off of other universities, or how did you go about creating this?
Yeah, so since so Chapter 6 is different, it doesn't go through AA, it's managed by Ways and Means, so it doesn't really follow, at least from my perspective, it doesn't really follow the same formatting, and this was just something that I had drafted up. I drafted up in the summer, actually, but I worked with previous people in the SGA who are no longer here, and just kind of talked with them about it. And since it is kind of a funding process, there's a little bit of difference in how that would be written, if that makes sense. But
Additional questions? Chair Stamen for a point of clarification.
Whoa. Sorry, I always get surprised by the mic. The other thing here too is, yes, it doesn't go through AA. I believe this is still going into our bylaws, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. So when this gets put into our bylaws, a lot of the bolding will go out, given the nature of the way the bylaws are written. The bolding and the formatting that you are seeing in here was more to just make the process very clear to understand and drive points home, and more for presentation purposes, less so for like bylaw purposes. So this will be taken, like the formatting stuff, that's not actually going into the bylaws. It's just more for presentation sake and to help facilitate conversation on the important points that we need to like hone in on and understand.
Yeah, so I was just mentioning on specifically like the wording of et cetera and things like that. But
Right. Yeah. So like, if I could offer any clarification on this, things being bolded or italicized, rarely is anything italicized in our bylaws. There's like a few exceptions to that, but visually, format wise, this would go into the bylaws. Chair Centenaro would be putting it in. It would match the format and the style that we currently have in the bylaws. So, it would have 1.2 spacing, 12-point font, Times New Roman. There would be a tab separation between the section and then the rest of the text. All of that stuff. But what we can't change is the wording of it. So that's something to consider. But questions? Yes, Senator Prabhakar.
I have a variety of questions, mostly just wanting to understand better what constitutes an actual change to like what we're already doing, because you said there wasn't a process outlined. So I just want to understand better like what in here is actually changing something versus just outlining what you guys are already doing. But I have some like really small things, so I'll just start with that if that's okay. In like if you scroll all the way up in like 1B or something, it says that the SGA will cut the budget if it's more than 77.5%, that they'll cut it to no less than 7.5%. Is that supposed to be no more? Like that doesn't make sense to me.
no, like they'll cut it down, but it can't go lower than exactly 7.5%. Does that make sense? So no less, it can't go lower than, like if it's above 7.5, it'll cut down to exactly 7.5, not less than 7.5.
Okay, and that's just because you don't want them like arbitrarily cutting the whole budget, or
Right, just making sure that if it does exceed 7.5 for some reason, that when it gets cut by Ways and Means, it just gets cut to the max 7.5.
okay.
Because then, like, what would you be cutting it to if not that? Because they don't, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just cut it to a random number, so it sets like
Yeah.
an exact number to cut it to.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then there's something in there about like you can't spend money to enrich specific individuals, which makes sense obviously, but I just wonder like how you would determine that, because obviously like paying someone enriches that individual even though it's not the primary like function of spending that money.
Yeah, so paying someone is not necessarily enriching them. Paying them is compensating them for their labor. Enriching someone would be giving things that aren't inherent, like that they didn't work for or contribute any work to. You know what I mean? Like giving someone a gift card because you like them or something. And that would just be something that would be considered, like, you have to specifically state each of these. Like, you have to touch on this, whoever makes the budget. So you would say, like, why is it supporting the responsibility of SGA members without specifically enriching them? So, like, we need this professional development thing because it will provide necessary skills for leadership to function their role or something like that.
So that'll be explained. Okay, and then does it say elsewhere in the bylaws that like officers can only be paid minimum wage, or is that a new thing?
Yeah, it's like university employees like student employees. Yeah.
Any staff member, we have to fund them at minimum wage. So that is like contracted for. That's not just. I don't think is it setting. I don't. It's set in our guidelines 100%. When we're funding groups in general that are requesting for payroll, it's especially for agencies because they have full-time staff. And for the SGA, we have to fund payroll at that amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could have misstated when I said that. I think I was just kind of working off my Ways and Means from last year mind and saying that I knew that student workers could only be paid $15, but
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't say it anywhere in our
Federal minimum
bylaws,
Not the
but
bylaws,
in
but-
university policy is another thing.
Okay. Great. And then the other thing I noticed is it appears to me like some of the stuff that SGA currently spends money on would not be eligible anymore. For example, like the SGA banquet end of year thing, it wouldn't like really, or SGA merch, for example.
yeah, so banquets paid by revenue,
Okay.
not our fee account. This is only for our fee account. That banquet has never, at least, I don't know, actually, I can't speak for previous administrations, but a private event can't be paid by the fee account anyway. So, I mean, we use our revenue to cover the expenses for food for that, or we get, you can find outside donations, grants, things like that to cover private events. But and merch also is only paid through revenue because you can't give merch or giveaways. Giveaways aren't eligible by fee funds. So
Okay, great. Like where do we get our revenue from? I don't even know that.
fundraising, grants, things like
Okay.
that. I don't know if I can disclose, but we do have revenue funds.
Okay, mysterious. Great. Thank you for answering all those questions. And then maybe if there's anything that constitutes like a really big change in this from the current process, could you just explain that?
Yeah, I'll just explain quickly, like, kind of what the process is, I guess, or what we've been running off of. So since SGA has been separated in the S1 into a separate line item, I still submitted a budget. Last year, they still submitted a budget to Ways and Means, but last year they set a non-binding resolution, which was voted on, unanimously passed through Senate last year, and that just set our budget to a certain number. They did present the budget. They said how they got to that number, but they just presented it. Didn't really, it wasn't like a budget because it was just one number in the motion, if that makes sense. They put up a motion, this is how much SGA should be funded at. Senate passed that, and then it was a non-binding resolution on the Ways and Means Committee. So then the Ways and Means Committee had to vote on it and put it on the S1 as that number. So this is just different because it's presenting an entire budget to the Senate, which the Senate has input into, and it's just more transparent, especially to the student body, about how we get our money and what our funding is. And it leaves less room for, I just see there could be issues in the future with a Secretary of Finance or an administration coming in and saying, we want this much money, fund us at this, and then that's it. But this makes it so that at least you have to give the information of the budget, how you got there, and just makes it a formal process, basically.
Additional questions? Senator Domain.
Could you talk a little bit more about how we get revenue? Like when was the last time we got revenue and how did we get that?
Yeah, so I don't have any. So the last time we got revenue, we got a grant, which Chair Onyeka applied for, and that was paid into an event specifically. So that went straight to our revenue, straight to an event. And that's usually how it happens, is like we'll find a grant or something like that, and it'll get transferred to us, and we'll use that specifically for an event or an initiative that we applied that for. You can also do like alumni networking things, like or like the Minute Fund, like when that event rolls around, things like that, to get just donations from maybe alumni or external people interested in the SGA. And then you can also do things like fundraisers. This year, prior to that, I had not gotten any revenue income, but we did have some left over because it carries over every year. I can't say what it's from specifically because I don't know. And I don't know what administration that came from. But yeah.
Questions, Senator Walker Hoover.
Yeah, I was looking at section 1C as well, when it says something about does not personally enrich specific individuals. I'm just wondering if this was a problem in the past.
I wouldn't say it's a problem that I have been aware of. I think it's just an important precaution to include in the provisions of it. It's kind of a similar thing to the ineligible line item of a giveaway, just not making sure that you don't put line items in there that are specifically to go to a position or individual to, you know, I don't know. I just think it was an important thing to include. And
So this section that you're talking about, and a lot of us has been talking about this is very consistent with the guidelines the committee uses every single year. That rule has existed before my time, before Dylan's time, for many, many years. So it's not on these funding bylaws because the SGA has done something ever in the past. As far as I know, I don't think we've ever done anything like that, but it's more so to make it consistent with our current fiscal policies with funding organizations. Fee money in general cannot be used to benefit one student more than another. Events that the SGA puts on using fee money has to be open to the entire campus. So we can't fund giveaways for that reason, is the term we use for things like that. We can't do it for RSOs. We can't do it for agencies. SGA is no different. This is just a fiscal policy we have towards what we can fund with fee money. Does that make sense?
I guess my follow-up question would be, before this proposed bylaw or amendment, what was the way to ensure that didn't happen, or that money to giveaways doesn't happen?
yeah, so technically, the idea is that the advisors who review the purchase request would see what you're purchasing, and they're supposed to stop any ineligible line item purchases. Now, can I say that 100% they're going to catch every single thing? I can't confirm that. That's why I set up the auditing process, which checks for those, and just as a double safety check kind of thing. But yeah, the advisors in source see every purchase request before it gets sent to SACL purchasing, and they're supposed to make sure that no ineligible purchases are going through. And Ways and Means looks at the budgets. Yeah, Ways and Means also would review the SGA budget before this, so.
Other questions? We'll take just a couple more.
No, you're good.
Any additional questions before we move on? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Secretary Bellerive and Chair Schneeman, for speaking on behalf of this. Does there exist a need for debates on S93? All right, with no indication of a need for debates, the questions on the passage of S93, a bill to amend Title VI of the General Bylaws of the Student Government Association. All those in favor of passing S93, please say aye. Aye. All of those opposed say no. All those abstained say abstain. The ayes have it. Accordingly, S93 passes. All right, next on the agenda is Resolution 11. However, Res 11 was deemed applicable to the consultation policy by at least 2/3 of the legislative leadership team. Therefore, it will be tabled until the next Senate meeting to allow for appropriate time to get the consultation. Meaning, we're on to officer reports. Trustee Oliveira is recognized. All right, President Humphreys is recognized.
Hello, everybody. I hope you are having a great week. I'm going to be really, really quick. Club sports we already went over, but that got signed, which is fantastic. Last Friday, we met with the Dean of Students office to discuss the registry reform. No, Code of Conduct reform. It's late. Code of Conduct reform at the Dean of Students office last week. We are very close to a final draft. It sounds like May 7th. Dean Cardoso is going to come during Committee of the Whole and present that. Then after that, it's going to go to the Chancellor for signing. They do have to do consultation with the broader student body, and they have to do some GSG consultation in the meantime. We are meeting again in early May to prep for that meeting when they come to Senate, but the plan is to have the Chancellor review it and sign it before July 1st, which is when the new code year would go into effect, and then we'll have a revised code of conduct for next year. So that's that. We did get a meeting on the book for veteran meal swipes. I believe that's coming up on May 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. So that's on the books. Had a great meeting with Constance from the PVTA last week, or the parking transportation last week. Talked about potential new routes to Greenfield and to as well as a stop at the UHS. They were very receptive. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. And the next thing we're going to do is try to do student consultation and also try to work with our local state officials and our, try to do some publicity for this. We're working very closely with Greenfield Community College. There may be some resolutions coming up in the near future. And overall, though, there's a lot of great working relations on this subject. Otherwise, the only other thing that I had, I think those are the main things. Everything else should be in my report out. One last thing, swipe donation program. It's today and tomorrow. I have confirmed it is working. So please, if you haven't donated a swipe yet, do so using the Get app. Tell your friends. Let's make this a success. Thank you, and I'll take any questions. Thanks, guys.
Vice President Leon.
All right, hey guys, I'll keep this kind of quick. I sent my report out. I don't know who the collision reporter is, but I think the headline of this meeting should be the fact that club sports passed. So, woo! Can we get a round of applause for that? Woo! Woo! Yay! 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 So that's a really big deal. And then most things are in my report out. I got the star again this week, so woo for that. So I won't go too much into detail. The main thing I wanted to mention was last Thursday, I went to the State House with Ella and the rest of Phenon. That was really cool. I drove a couple of us. I didn't crash on the way to Boston, so that's cool as well. We met with a lot of state senators and just reps in general. We met with Rep. Carmine. We met with Joe Comerford. She is the vice chair of Ways and Means in the State House. We met with Senator Oliveira, and the main goal was to try to push for $20 million more in the budget next year for more financial aid. And I think it's more important than ever that we try to make sure that we have more financial aid next year with the status of federal financial aid up in the air. So yeah, most things in my report out, so please read it in detail if you guys have any further questions. Does anybody have any specific questions for me? Cool, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I believe this is the fourth to last Senate meeting, or maybe there are four more after this, and so the semester is wrapping up quickly. But I'll all the information's in my reports. I do want to say, though, that I've been meeting with Speaker-elect Pavetti and Associate Speaker-elect Germain for transition meetings, and they've been just wonderful. And so we have a lot of transition stuff coming up. Both Melina and I are working on our binders, making sure they're very comprehensive so that they have a solid base for next year. But yeah, if any questions come up about my reports, do let me know now, or you can email me. I'm usually in the office. Cool. Associate Speaker Honoratus.
Hi, everyone. Everything's pretty much in my report out. Something I do want to mention is, as you all know, I sit on the 5 College Student Board, and we do funding requests. So it's kind of a place where students from 5 colleges, if they can't get enough funding, can come to us and ask for funding. But something that I've noticed, and I'm working with Kevin, who leads the 5 College Student Board, is that there's no model for that. Like, we kind of just like wing it, like what money we want to give. And I'm hoping to help create a sort of like funding model for that, and maybe like model it after like the emergency fund. So if any senator wants to like get their foot in the door on like a last minute project this semester, I could use your help. I would love your help. Reach out to me. You know my email. And yeah, any questions? Okay, happy long weekend.
Chief Justice, RHA President. Any RSO Council Presidents may be recognized. All right, on to Cabinet. Any member of Cabinet wishing to be recognized can come up. Chief of Staff Bloom.
Hi guys. Is this on? Yeah. Very excited to announce that I gave out the last bike for real this time from the bike share yesterday. So it's all done. That's really great. Currently the bike storage is in the Honors College and it's just not very accessible. I'm working with the bike co-op and JD to try and get more accessible storage potentially in the student union. If people are interested in helping out or just helping transfer the bikes around the end of the year, that would be amazing, especially if you're in the Honors College, because then you have access. I also just want to address something because we were talking about it in our joint leadership meeting before Senate, and just some things about report outs. I know they're long. I know they're kind of boring sometimes, but it is kind of sometimes the only kind of bridge between executive and legislative leadership, and I think that's really important. So just make sure to pay attention. We don't have that many Senate meetings left, and if you want to get involved, feel free to contact us. We don't bite. We're really awesome. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Questions? Thank you. Secretary Bellery.
As you saw, I got the funding bylaw passed last week through Ways and Means and then presented it tonight. I am working on wrapping up auditing, which I will try to present the 7th, I think. I'm committing to that now. So that me and my treasurer are working on, and I got the bike share MOU completed, and that got sent out tonight. Thank you, Naomi. So if anyone wants to know any of the details about that for any reason, just come to me, let me know. But the bike share is formalized for another 2 years at least. So yeah, that's all my report out.
Any questions? Cool. Secretary Sharda.
Everyone. So a couple things is we're trying to work as the year ends for RSO email transition. So that's a big thing going on. Another thing is we're finally trying to get numbers and release forms regarding alumni accounts and a centralized syllabi portal. So yeah, the rest is my report out. Questions? Cool.
Secretary Ahmad's representatives.
Hi, so Sophia and I are the new PR undersecretaries for Hadia. She unfortunately had to leave, but wanted us to update you guys on a few new things we're doing. So we've started, first of all, a Google form. So you all should have gotten an email earlier. If you want something to be posted, fill out the Google form, reach out to us if you have any questions, but it's just gonna try to streamline our posting process so that we have everything in order and it's much easier for everything to get out in a timely manner. And then
In regards to international students and all the stuff going on right now, I know that there's a lot of groups working on the issue specifically. I just want to know if there's a way that we can all collaborate. I reached out to Yaya, who's in charge of the international student services, and then Sojek and ODC. And it seems like a lot of people are working on the same thing, but we want to streamline the information, create a Know Your Rights pamphlet, and figure that out as soon as possible because students need that.
Any questions? All right. Secretary DeRose.
Hey everyone. So I wasn't at the last few Senate meetings because I was participating in a pilot program of a climate literacy training that is being put on by the School of Earth and Sustainability, which was really cool. Hopefully they're going to run it again with another cohort in the fall. So definitely be on the lookout for that from your future Secretary of Sustainability. So I have a lot of updates because next week is the Earth Day extravaganza. And for those who don't know, it's a giant farmer's market. Essentially, there's going to be 180 people tabling on Goodell Lawn next Friday from 12 to 4. So definitely be sure to go out. There's going to be cool vendors, groups from all the 5 colleges related to sustainability things. And so very cool day. And then we're doing a lot of other stuff. So this Friday, my undersecretary and I, Liana, will be at Worcester Cafe, and you guys can come from 11 to 2 to enter a raffle to win a reusable cup. If you like guess the right number or something, and we have a lot of cups, so you're most likely going to win one. So definitely come to Worcester this Friday. It's happening again the next Friday too. And then, next Wednesday, I'm going to send this in a recap email. Next Wednesday, you guys can go to the Student Union Craft Center and screen print on a tote bag, like a cool design. It says UMass Earth Day, but it's for free. So SGA is covering the cost. So I'm going to send out the specific details, but that's next Wednesday. And then we're doing a bunch of discounts if you bring reusables to any on-campus cafe all next week. So bring your reusable to get a coffee next week. And then I just wanted to send out another reminder for people to sign up for decarbonization tours that are being offered by the sustainability manager here on campus. It's a really cool opportunity to see and like step foot on the new construction sites for both the Sustainable Engineering Lab located near Bowker Hall and then the Computer Science Lab, like the new CompSci building. And then you also get to see the new geothermal well site that they're drilling essentially. So it's really cool. And I learned a lot about like just the energy transition and how UMass works energy wise. So definitely recommend. It's like you're probably not going to get that opportunity again. So do that. But I'll send an email with the links and stuff. But thank you guys. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Secretary Merchant.
She's just, I have a report out. She has been working on getting the database up and running for the supply closet. So, yeah. Questions?
Any faculty senate representatives? Any ESO event representatives? Or Vice President Leone?
All right. I was like, did I go to an event this weekend? I don't remember. But I did. So I went to a CVSA awareness night. Sid's sister made some really good food, and it was really awesome. There was some cool poems, and it was really cool just to have the community out and show support for the CVSA community. The chancellor was there, so it was really cool to see him there and get support from him as well. Yeah, really good food. So I'll pass the call on.
Going to quickly add on to that. Went to CVSA night. It was incredible. The food was great. The entertainment was great. The people were great. There was a lot of Sid appreciation, which I really appreciated. And
There should be.
CVSA, Sid, and their team did a fantastic job with the event. If you didn't make it this year, go next year. And yeah.
Any other ESO event representatives? Okay. Any advisory board representatives? Cool. All right. On the Senate committee reports. chairs who have any updates may be recognized. Chair Raven.
Hey everybody. Only update is that you should fill out the form that Hadia sent out regarding academics and how your experience has been here at UMass, and get your friends to do it. Please post about it. And everything else is in my report out. So yeah, that's it.
Any questions? All right. Chair Centinaro.
Hi, everyone. Nothing much to report that isn't in my report out. We concluded eligibility petition appeals and agency appeals. Moving on to RSOR appeals, just found out we have a whopping 39 to review tomorrow evening. So looking forward to that. On a more positive note, I do want to quickly shout out Melina, Jill, and Urja for being selected to be founding members of our newly established pre-law fraternity here on campus. Super competitive process, so I do just want to quickly give them a round of applause. Little SGA representation, which is super exciting. Other than that, if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Hey guys, I just had a few updates or like additions to my report out. Number one, we're still like working on planning the after party. There's been a lot of like conflict with dates and times and everything, but Michael and I are working on it. More details to follow. Second, tonight, Elections Commission applications open up for next year. So if you're interested, or if someone you know is interested, definitely apply. ODC will be conducting interviews for that next week, and I believe you can apply if you're in Senate, though, right?
Yeah. So with elections commissioners, oh my gosh, I'd have to review that before giving you an answer.
Okay, whatever. For that, go to Michael. Next,
let me look right now.
ODC is also working on the end of year survey. So if you guys don't know, at the end of the year, we just circulate a survey among all the officers, and we kind of just present the results. It's just a general survey of your experience in the SGA. If any leadership members or if any other senators want to have like a question added to that survey, maybe you want to gauge like what people think about a certain project or a certain initiative that you or your committee did, definitely reach out to me and I'd be happy to add that question. And lastly, if now the chair applications are open, if anyone's interested in applying for the chair of Outreach and Development, definitely reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about my experience and just offering advice. But yeah, any questions?
Chair Nyaka.
Hi everyone, I hope you're doing. Hello. Okay. I hope you guys are doing okay. So the Plan Bs were just delivered last weekend. So I have a meeting tomorrow with Amber from Vending Machine Services to get it like put into the vending machines. That we're hoping that we're able to like design it, make it pretty. I'm gonna work with my committee and also UMass Students for Reproductive Justice to like make the machine like look nice and then have a video so people know where to find it. So for people who don't know, it's like in the campus center basement. In the back where the COVID machines would have been, we're gonna have that and like some flyers around so people know some other resources on campus. And other than that, my committee is still working on our Know Your Rights events, which is hopefully will be the first week of May. The date is tentative, so I'll let you guys know once I have that. But other than that, that's really it. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I do have a point of clarification for Chair Sarna's Elections Commission hiring. Title 8, Chapter 8, Section 1 reads, no member of the Elections Commission shall hold elected or appointed office in the SGA during the term of their Elections Commission membership. Question.
Point of clarification, where is that? I'm
Middle.
seeing Chapter 2, Section 3.
Looking in Title 8, Chapter 8, Section 1, Elections Commission Code of Conduct and Procedures.
Chapter 2, Composition of the Elections Commission, Section 3.2 says.
Repeat that.
Okay. Chapter 2, Composition of the Elections Commission. Oh, Title.
You're in Title 8?
Yeah, Title 8.
Okay.
Chapter 2, Section 3.2.
Yes.
Exempted from this prohibition are the offices of Elections Assistant, Elections Commissioner, Special Assistant, and Senator.
So it reads, no elections assistant shall be eligible.
Oh, assistant, okay.
so that's elections assistance.
thank you.
Yeah. So I reiterate. Title 8, Chapter 8, Section 1. No member of the Elections Commission shall hold elected or appointed office in the SGA during the term of their election commission membership. If you've been elected as a senator for next year and you want to apply, just know that you'll have to resign. So, yeah. Any other questions, though, let me or Chair Sarna know. Chair Tran.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for all the member of Europe because we have finally finalized the CAP process. So thank you so much for all the member of Europe. Just a big shout out for them for all the work that they have done and all the meeting they have proceed. And also Europe also have reviewed the amendment that we gonna amend in the next Senate meeting. So if you guys wanna maybe change that a little bit and maybe amend something, and like especially some people here have question about the number of requirement members, that could also just reach out to me and like set up like a one-on-one meeting with me and Rania if you want to, and then yeah, we can talk about that and maybe change the wording or whatever requirement that you feel might not be fair for the existing RSO or maybe the new RSO applicant that's gonna happen in the fall. So yeah, if you have any question about that, just reach out to me. Question? No? Okay, thank you.
Chair Mazzando.
All right, so USC had their meeting on a Friday where we talked about a lot of things. We talked about minutes matter, any like next steps with that. We also talked about accessibility, UHS, the PVTA, and we also talked about how to help international students. I do agree with Sophia that we need to find a better way to kind of get everybody involved because I see a lot of little facets here and there who have their own ideas. So if we can find a way to, build that coalition of everybody in just one group, I feel like that could be really beneficial to the international community here. Also, right after the USC meeting, we had the first ever Administrative Transparency Subcommittee meeting, which Chair Jame will discuss with you guys right now.
Good evening, everybody. We had our first A&T meeting this Friday down at the office. We started off with our basic plan, which was breaking down. We made a spreadsheet that was breaking down the tuition breakdown of each college. We're supposed to finalize that by this Friday. We're also planning on meeting with admin before the semester ends. We don't know how possible that would be, especially since we have about 4 weeks left. But for now, we're mainly focusing on transparency and trying to get a database set up that showcases where all of our tuition is being allocated to, because as of now, everything is on different websites, and we want to get that all concentrated down into one database that everybody can access. So if you just want to sit in on a meeting, it's 5:30 in the office on Friday. Not an ideal time, but just stop by if you have any recommendations or if you want to work on any initiatives together. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Chair Stamen.
Hello. So I want to first start off by apologizing. I wasn't here last week. I was actually rolling out budgets for RSOs while we were in Senate, and my vice chair was helping me do that because we ran into quite a few issues and we needed to make the deadline. With that being said, I am thrilled to announce that the Ways and Means Committee has finally finished budget review. Can we give them a hand? So we reviewed 265 RSO budgets, totaling to $7,816,175, and we had around 6,534 line item requests that we went through. And I want to give a special shout out actually to Jill and Darren. These guys stayed up with me till 3 a.m. on Saturday just to make sure we finished on time, given the number of issues we ran into. So please give a big round of applause to those two, because we would not be here right now if it weren't for them. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to my committee. When I said lock in, oh boy, did they lock in. So now we finished budget review. So what is next? So that's what I want to talk to you guys about. I know we're having a lot of financial conversations in this room. We just passed the SGA finance bylaws. It's super exciting. But I know that we want to change our processes. I know there's a lot of folks that are interested. I was going to ask this last Senate meeting, but I want to ask this now. How many of us are interested in changing financial reforms for next year? Just can I get a raise of hands? Okay, you guys, listen up. So, Ways and Means, this Thursday, we are going to go over our RSO funding guidelines. We're going to be talking about issues we ran into this year, hardships RSOs are facing, and how we want to make this process better. During this meeting, I will tell you when it is in just a minute, we are going to be making a recommendations document for the future chair of Ways and Means containing all this information so they are fully equipped and ready to go and not starting from scratch like I literally did this year. I was doing everything from memory. I had a 6-page transition binder. It was not great. So that is what we're starting off with. I would like to use this as an opportunity to facilitate discussion. So this will not be a normal committee meeting. It'll be discussion. So I'm inviting you guys all to come to that meeting. That will be the first thing that we're going to be doing. So that is going to be this Thursday. So that's tomorrow, 7 p.m. in the SGA office. Please come if you're interested, because I know we have a lot of financial work we want to do. And I think that is a good and easy place to start. And for some of our beginners here, a great way to learn about the process and get some work done. Okay, so does that sound good for all of you? Awesome. Okay. Just want to make sure I don't have anything else. Yes, I was going to mention this last week, but wasn't here last week. Core 4 and I have officially started our financial, I like to call them catch-up sessions. So new leadership has been invited to our Tuesday meetings to also ease financial transition, make sure that people are well informed going into next year. Again, not drawing blank, and we're giving them the tools and the knowledge they need to make the correct and informed decisions next year. And on top of that, the appeals process, as Val I'm sure has mentioned, has closed literally an hour ago, well, to submit appeals. So we're going to start reviewing literally tomorrow, which is going to be a fun time, I know. But I also wanted to mention that I will also be having my numbers meeting. For those of you who don't know, the numbers meeting will be held on April 24th. This is where I will be meeting with our SACL finance staff and going over the allocations, making allocationary decisions. And then shortly after that, the committee has to review it and they approve it and it will be sent to Senate. If you are interested in finances and you want to be involved in that process and you want to learn about it, whatever it may be, connect with me, please. Send me an email, shoot me a text. Many of you have my number. And I invite you to come to the committee meeting where we will be going over that information because they have to approve it anyway. I just don't need more people in that room because I will be really stressed out and we don't want to see me stressed out. Okay, that's it. Anything else? Any questions? Okay, now you can snap now.
All right. One more round of applause for Ways and Means and all their hard work. All right. On to the SGA advisor. All right. I'm trying to find my tabs. There we go. All right. No business unanticipated. Meaning the associate speaker will record ending roll call.
Okay, Senator Denny. Senator Arreola. Senator Bauman. Senator Beltrami. Senator Black. Senator Borski. Senator Petusova. Chair Centenaro. Senator Chamu. Senator DeMarco. Senator Dami. Senator Duarte. Clerk Duvetti. Senator Eze. Senator Patricia. Senator Gatto. Senator Germain. Senator Hercule. Senator Hiranandani. Senator Holohan. Senator Ibrahim. Senator Imran. Senator Jame. Senator Kim. Senator Kim. Senator Lequier. Senator Lay. Senator Molesky. Senator Lafort. Senator Malari. Senator Mondo. Chair Mazondo. Senator Mello. Senator Nashi. Senator Nevins. Senator Nguyen. Chair Onyeka. Senator Patek. Senator Fawn. Senator Prabhakar. Chair Rabin. Is that here? Senator Rue. Chair Sarna. Chair Sharma. Senator Shi. Chair Stamen. Senator Tao. Chair Tran. Senator Chung. Senator Verma. Senator Walker Hoover.
All right. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Chair Onyeka. Second. All right. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All those abstain say abstain. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the Senate stands adjourned until April 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Have a good night. Yes, I figured.